is facing fresh evidence of police abuse of migrants. Pakistani and Afghan asylum seekers made allegations that they were beaten and even tortured by border guards. Our political editor Darren McCaffrey reports.
Migrants are on the move again. In fact, 5 times as many crossed into the European Union in May compared to a month earlier, as coronavirus lockdowns across the continent are eased and borders reopen. That includes through Croatia, who currently hold the EU presidency, where there have been repeated allegations of mistreatment and even torture of migrants. In a case documented in The Guardian, Pakistanis and Afghans were allegedly tied to a tree before being subject to abuse by men in uniform and then forced back across the border by officers. Allegations denied by Croatian police, but ones that the EU Commission are aware of. It's also said that Croatian ministers have failed to fulfil promises to properly monitor abuse, even though they were given EU money to do so. A reminder that many migrants are still seeking refuge in a Europe that is sometimes not keen on offering it. Darren McCaffrey, Euronews, Brussels. Well, I'm here inside the European Parliament at the Bridge, our point for Euronews. As we discuss this issue and what it means, not just for Croatia, but indeed for the European Union, a reminder in many regards that even though it has not been a prominent story, of course, in recent months, that the migration crisis does continue for many. And as I noted at the start of my report, the number of migrants trying to get into Europe has again increased in the last month or so as those restrictions have eased. But there are those continuing concerns about the action of Croatian police and indeed the response from the European Union. Let's get the views now of 2 of my guests who join me, as I say, here in Brussels. We've got Claire Daly. She is a Irish MEP with the Green Left, and we've also got Juan Fernando Lopez Alara, who is a Spanish MEP with the Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats, but also is chair of the Civil Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs Committee. Thank you both indeed for joining us. Claire, let's just start with you first of all, because you've been looking at this issue for a while. What have you uncovered that concerns you most?
Yeah, I mean, look at the allegations of really bad treatment to migrants and refugees on Croatia's borders are not new. We've had repeated accounts of extreme violence, theft, humiliation, branding going on. And when we raised it here with representatives from the Commission, we were told, first of all, well, look, no, everything's okay in Croatia. I mean, we've given them money, we've set up a monitoring mechanism to enable a scrutiny of making sure that they're in compliance with fundamental rights in this area, which is obviously an obligation of Schengen. But of course, when we question that further, we discover that out of the almost 7 million which Croatia got for its border controls, only 300,000 of that was given to an independent monitoring mechanism, and then it emerged through questioning that precious little of that was actually spent. We were told that the UNHCR and the Croatian Law Society were doing this work. Then, under scrutiny, we found out that they weren't. Then, when we asked some more questions, I suppose inadvertently received, or let's just say somebody made a mistake and included in some correspondence with me emails from the Commission basically suggesting that they were well aware that the Croatians hadn't set up this monitoring mechanism, that the money wasn't spent. They even said in the emails that this would be a scandal if it was revealed. They talked about not revealing it to me and, basically then suggested a cover-up, that they would work with the Croatians in more or less doctoring a report which would be given to our committee to scrutinise. So.
And that's pretty extraordinary, isn't it, Juan Fernando, that the European Union, that the Commission seem to have actually been working with the Croatians in trying to keep this money that hadn't been spent in the proper way a secret.
If that happens to be the case and verified, that would be appalling, an outrage and scandal. But it has to be clarified. It has to be verified, for one thing. And it's our duty as the committee responsible of Liberty, Justice and Home Affairs to make the Commission accountable. And certainly we will, because it has to be said clearly that we in the Libe Committee, we uphold very seriously Schengen as the most valuable asset of the European experience ever. But Schengen has its rules. And to enter Schengen, as we expect every member state to enter Schengen, including Croatia, including Bulgaria and Romania, who have not been allowed so far, despite our efforts to have them in, you have to abide by the rule of law. You have to abide by the Schengen Borders Code, which has a component, a legal component of respect for human rights, for one thing, and of course, of transparency when it comes to the allocation of European budgeting. We have secured European budgets, an asylum and migration fund, an internal security fund. Schengen is a whole system, and we are most concerned that in this case we have heard such serious allegations, not only of systematic violence, but also torture practices which should be outlawed and completely out of the scene from the European landscape for long.
And isn't this the concern, Claire, as the numbers increase again this summer, that there's very little sign that this practice may well have changed, and we'll never know because there's not those official monitors in place?
Well, I suppose we're fortunate that there are some very dedicated NGOs on the ground who have done incredibly diligent work in documenting these horrific reports from desperate migrants. And as you say, the traffic has continued in the midst of COVID. Undoubtedly, it is going to continue more. But actually, the allegations are increasing as well. So the responsibility is very much coming to the door of the Commission on this. I mean, we have a Schengen Scrutiny Group, which is a subgroup of the Justice and Home Affairs Committee. We have a meeting tomorrow with representatives of the Commission, and the colleagues across all of the political groups are taking this correspondence very seriously. We've all seen the emails, we've put it to the Commissioner, and we are really concerned at the fact that there hasn't been an adequate answer back to us to what are incredible allegations, really, of the Parliament being essentially lied to against the backdrop of incredibly serious human rights allegations of severe violations there. So, I mean, yeah, it's pretty major, and we will be expecting the rule of law and to be the rights of asylum seekers to be upheld in these cases.
This clearly comes at a time that Croatia's the EU. It holds the EU rotating presidency. Do you think that's been a factor potentially in this, that the Commission have decided to bury this story?
I think that should be a major dismay for the whole of the European Parliament to get to see that a country holding the rotating presidency for the first time, and we have celebrated it, has been into such series of systematic violations of human rights, which are basic. And of course, in a context which is a negative outlook, which has been predominant for all too long against migration and asylum alike, which is not to be accepted, which is not to be sustained, not at all. We need to change that negative outlook. Migrants are not a threat to European identity. Migrants are not a threat to European identity, let alone say about people in despair fleeing from prosecution, asylum seekers. They deserve respect, and they deserve a common European policy. But for that to happen, you need to abide by the rule. There is such a thing as a European common asylum system, and you don't deserve the credit to be a part of it if you are not able to dismantle those allegations in a swift and credible way.
I think a really interesting point is actually the allegations were there before Croatia assumed the presidency. This started when the Commission said that Croatia had essentially fulfilled the criteria to join the Schengen acquis, and others were saying, well, no, there are a lot of answers that need to be had first before we would take that step. But the signal is, and Juan Fernandez is right, like, you would believe from the Commission's response, really, that securing Europe's border is more important to the Commission than upholding international law and the rights of asylum seekers from their response so far.
Guys, we're going to have to leave it there. Claire and Fernando, thank you very much indeed for joining us from the European Parliament here in Brussels. As you can see, these allegations are serious around, as I say, torture, and, you know, it seems like an ongoing situation involving the Croatian police, and clearly MEPs are angry that simply the Commission has not confronted this properly and may actually have been involved in attempting to do down this story. So there will be a lot more questions, as we've seen. We're waiting for the answers, but this is a story that's clearly not going to go away, Isabel.
That's right, Darren. Pressure mounting there on the European Commission to respond. Well, Darren McCaffrey in Brussels.